disconnected. We're back again. Hello.
Oh, there we go. I was like, oh no, did my phone had died or something? I'm like, oh no, like right in the middle of it. I'm so sad. Okay, I'm glad then it was just something else and it was both of us. You know what, where was I, if you don't mind if I sort of pick up, I was like deep in thought and I was talking for a minute before I realized that we had cut out. So,
yes, please continue, Evie.
I was that passionate about it, but this is exactly what I was thinking last night is like, you know, here I am, I'm somebody who studies celebrity culture and I'm a fan. So like, I definitely want to consume this new documentary. I want to watch it and see what information they're offering. But it's like, okay, is this, I don't know where the line is. Like, am I, you know, I could say I'm doing it in preparation for our talk and because I want to be as informed as possible, but I can't, I'm having trouble making that call of like, okay, how is this information supposed to be presented? You had mentioned the thing with the fans and how the fans were sort of represented in the documentary. And that's always my issue is that, you know, the fans, it's like a sensibility. I can't really say that like you can really pinpoint this actually happening, but it's a general sensibility that like they're showing fans crying or fans maybe acting too much, you know what I mean, in the video. And I asked myself, like, I wonder if they would do a fan-centered documentary for the movement to share what their real wants and desires are for Britney. But that could only happen if it was done from the angle of maybe a fan, like having somebody like really put this together to not make them look, you know, the stereotypical crazy, like fan stud. I mean, that goes all the way back to Star Trek fans have always been portrayed as like crazy people. You know what I mean? Like total, like, yeah, every denigrating name in the book, but it's like, no, these are actually people who really care, who are being very politically active in this realm and should, you know, definitely deserve some better representation here. But again, it's like, does that need to happen in another documentary? Like, I don't, you know, like maybe not. Or is that the only avenue to show them in a new light? Like, I'm pulled in all sorts of directions.
My concern is that it will be co-opted to serve the interests of whatever corporation is running the show, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, HBO, name them. You know, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
There are fans that are, there is a series called the Deep Dive series on YouTube. I highly recommend you check it out. Okay. It's put together by a lovely darling by the name of Jake Yonsei. And Jake Yonsei's partner is Shelby. So they've edited this, it's like 6-part series that's really unpacking most of the stuff that you don't see in the mainstream documentaries. You're like, oh, wait a minute. And this is, they've been working on this for a long time. That's the part of it to me that also triggered this, okay, who's benefiting for any, you know, for any cultural product. I think the thing also is that sense of, you know, the question that you asked, Evie, in terms of if it were a fan-centered documentary being made, the additional question that comes up for me is the movement is so diverse. You have fans who are like, I just want another album. I can respect that. I can find major areas of disagreement with that, but I can respect it. You have fans who are activists before they were ever fans. There, you have folks who, you know, there's a pretty well-known attorney, newish attorney named BJ, who goes by Surprise Witness. She does court document breakdowns, you know, and just really unpacking. There's so much labor involved in that work on her YouTube. So I think it would be difficult to just have it be very streamlined and just, this is one type of person. It's much easier to show slight different layers of cuckoo or crazy in the fan, in these mainstream documentaries, instead of really showing the people, sorry to get all, you know, philosophical or get wordy, but instead of showing the actual people who are part of this. And I think to me that also speaks to this question of, you know, we are a culture of extremes and just, you know, put everything into a box, you know, and it's either something's really incredible or something's really horrible. Cancel that person or praise them like they're the second coming of Jesus. You can't do that in the real world. Like, the real world is complicated and difficult. And how do you put that into a product that you are then trying to sell to the masses, who in general, if we're talking cultural studies speak or media studies speak, the idea is to passively receive whatever's being presented rather than actively engaging in viewing, in unpacking and receiving media products, etc.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
so many different things at stake and working together that, for me, I don't think it would come, sorry, this is really pessimistic, I don't think it'll come from anyone that's backed by a corporation.
No.
My secret hope is that more people within this movement in particular, but in general, grab the reins and make their own content, and not necessarily sign a deal to then get produced by such and so at the first offer. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And also, I would say, like, to your point, fans could do that because they are so creative and they are so hardworking. Like you said, there's so much labor that goes into this. They could, you know, make their own film, make their own story, create that, you know, for like this sort of audience. Like, it's definitely a possibility to do that without corporate help and to do it from the ground up. There would be so much support there. So I do think that that's an option.
It's an option. I will add, however, Evie and Samita, that I think we as fans, as consumers of culture, as the like regular folk, we often mirror the approaches and the what's being offered to us from this hierarchy, from the elites. You know, like I've seen within the movement, without getting too critical, but I've seen that sense of it's either one way or the other, or it's, you know, we have to just stick to one representation, when in fact it's so much more diverse.
Yeah.
This applies to everyday life. I mean, every person is layered, and I felt during the pandemic there's so much intolerance towards, you know, layers of life, and anything could trigger anybody. And I feel like, you know, there's lack of education on what is to be human. You know, like what we call art is really life, and it's just to be human. But I think, you know, we have so much work to do on what it means to be human. And I think, you know, like we were saying before, each one of us have the ethical responsibility to have that creative agency and establish that before, you know, signing any deal with any corporation. And we talked about having boundaries. Now, I think this second part of our Instagram Live will be archived because we had a disconnect. So, I would love to, you know, sum up everything that we talked about, you know, like having boundaries, having creative agency, learn, you know, how to say yes to and how to say no to things that are, you know, aligned or not aligned with us. And I think, Tamar, the way, you know, you presented everything is just so fantastic. And I think there's so much to learn. And I'm just curious. I have a fan question for you, Tamar. Is there a documentary film coming from your movement?
From the Free Britney movement?
Yes, and the movement that, you know, you're leading.
I would say look to the deep dive folks. I would say I am navigating these questions of visibility myself, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with Yahoo Canada through your connection, Samita. But it also brought up a lot of questions for me where I don't want to exploit any other human being, especially somebody like Britney Spears, who I now have learned so much more about, moving from fan, I've also been a fan most of my life, to someone who is intellectually and emotionally invested in her and many other individuals' freedom and rights and justice, because there are disability justice elements involved in this as well. I'm navigating how to contribute these days. Like, I've gone a little bit more quiet personally, because I'm like, how do I offer support? How do I make a film myself? That's my background. Do I write about it? It's a question I cannot answer for you today, but within the movement, there are individuals who are creating independent content, which I'm really proud of and excited by. And I think this will continue, because I don't believe that this coming hearing on Wednesday, there's a hearing on the 29th, I don't think that's going to be a close the book, it's all done and she's free. And also, I think that unfortunately, this case, it's too profitable to have it end so quickly. And that part of it is something where I am grappling with, because I don't want in any way to contribute to more exploitation, you know, like, not that I'm, who am I, but I think that's a question for each of us in any project or in any context. What does my imprint involve? Are there consequences involved in my imprint? Does this push somebody else down so I can make my way? And is that something, how do I navigate that? Because we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about exploitative corporate capitalism based on competition and, really, part of my language, shitty behavior to each other. And that's something that's not easy to give up, because, I mean, I'm 44, that's been my life. I've learned it all around, and I've tried to push back, and I'm certain that each of you have as well. Yes.
Yes, it's something that, I have been going through. And of course, like, we are all learning every single day. But it's such a challenge, and it's something that nobody has to go through, like, whether you are a woman, whether, you don't have the same abilities as, somebody else. In some of my public talks, I'm also talking about neurodiversity. I know we're quite aware of mental health, but something that, the sensationalization of mental health has overlooked is the fact that, we're all diverse in terms of our neurological capacities. We all have what I call, and this is published in my latest journal article, creative cognition. And this is something that we have to know for ourselves before anybody else could define for us. So something that I've learned also through, media and public relations, public speaking in particular, is how to frame ahead of time who you are, how you think, and what you can do and what you cannot do. Of course, this comes from a lot of, excuse my language, shitty experiences. But, at the age we're at, unfortunately, that's what we learn, and hopefully we come out with a lot of wisdom. And this is something that I want the future generation to be well aware of. I see so many, high school students, college students, full of potential, with the technologies that we have. I'm also now with Stage 32 with close to 800,000 members, and they made technology so democratic, so accessible. But what does it mean to have accessibility? So I think to be aware of neurodiversity, to be aware of basic communication, not have technical jargon all the time. That's what most corporations have. And that's how they create barriers. So the more we make communication accessible without jargon, make sure it's diverse, it's inclusive. But Tamar, I was just so happy to hear that, the fan movement for Britney Spears is so diverse. That's really good to know. And again, this is something that corporations don't necessarily cover, but I'm glad you brought that out. Now, I feel this kind of message should be out there every single day, which is something that you're doing. Evie, what would you have to say? I feel like, we're learning so much today.
I know. I've definitely learned so much from the conversation. So thank you so much, Tamar and Samita, like you as well. Your insights are always just like so spot on and like so deep, and like you always consider the human experience. I guess my last question for this, like in regards to Britney and everything that is happening, especially with this court date coming up. Like, what can we, because like I said, I sort of came in today as like, I'm a fan. I want, whatever is going to be the best for her. Like, I'm like even removing my sort of like scholarly lens. Like, what do you think, Tamar, we can do? Like, how can we best sort of like support her and support the movement in this time?
I mean, I will say, as much as I've talked about vigilance and active participation, I think there are different ways to be an active participant, and they can sometimes include the most tender gestures. This morning, there's actually there are some Twitter, hashtag trending events going on. Tweet My Heart is the one this morning, sending really positive messages to Britney Spears. There were a few months ago, there was Dear Britney, and just, making videos, sending messages, just really kindness and, engaging in that empathy of, we are also in some ways, that sense of the rabid fan. It's not that we buy into it to a certain extent as well. And I think pushing back against it and saying, okay, I'm not going to just churn away at things. Maybe there's a way to be gentle in my activism today. Maybe there's a way to say, you know what, I'm thinking of, I post, videos of my cat purring and I tag Britney Spears. Who even knows if it will ever get to her, because that's a whole other conversation, the social media accounts, who runs them and all of that. I will say, Samita, you spoke to, students and education. In addition to the PhD I worked on, I completed a preparing future faculty certificate, so teaching teachers how to teach, basically. And over the summer at Claremont, I was teaching a section of the ethical pedagogy course. And I was really, not that I was shocked, I wasn't shocked, but I was disheartened and really saddened by how many of my students were like, how shall I put this? They're like, Professor, I've never felt this kind of kindness and this sense of community and support ever. And these are graduate students. Oh. So it makes us think about, my argument would be, even the academy is corporatized. How do we push back against that? Is it an aggressive push? Is it a gentle, empathy infused approach? Is it both? I think engagement, awareness, and tapping into diversity in terms of how we approach is also something to take into consideration. Not everyone needs to be that one fan activist who is screaming into the street at the rally. There are people who are, I have many friends within this movement that are overseas, and they are crafting and making art and, finding different ways to share their support, not only with the individual whose art and whose music they've enjoyed for so many decades, but also with each other, with this community of like-minded and passionate individuals. Diversity, there's different ways to go about it, but the idea is to be aware and awake and seek things out that are, and not just accept whatever is, the mainstream, or whatever's being offered by, some fancy person that we all look up to.
I know, and just to go back to like, what is art? Essentially we're talking about pop art, but at the end of the day, it's art. And we have a lovely little reflection here. It's from Britney Neo.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so she says that, we had a brilliant quote. That's a brilliant quote. There's lack of education on what it means to be human. Art is life. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's really reassuring, and we have to remind ourselves. Evie, we had a wonderful conversation with George and Casey before. We were talking about this, like how to design life in a way that is reflected in our art and really operate at the craft level. And it's so reassuring to hear, Tamar, that all the activists are really like, well, I won't say all, some are just consumers, but there are many creatives, who are just crafting and sharing. And this is something to learn. They're just not passive consumers. They're really like very creative souls. And I think this is something that we could all do every single day. Those who joined a little later or joined after, we got disconnected. Today we have Tamar. She is our special guest, and she's a media expert. She's a fan activist for the Free Britney movement. Please follow her. Follow Evie, our wonderful moderator as well. Tamar has a background in film and television. She was in photography. She was with a photography agency in New York City, and now she's in Los Angeles. So if you want to learn more about, how to be an artist, how to, be more involved in media literacy, please all follow Tamar, and also her Twitter account. Evie, Tamar, can you share your Twitter accounts as well?
Sure. I'll type it into the comments. How's that?
Okay, sounds good.
I'll do the same thing.
Okay.
I would recommend going to my Twitter. That's where all the fun stuff happens. Instagram, I don't know. I think I'm in a transition with Instagram. I just want to post pictures of flowers and the cat. But if you're into that, send me a request.
Well, you're an animal lover, I'm guessing, because, you have your cat, and I love cats too.
I love that so much. I just want to say too, like before we sort of wrap up, number one, yeah, my Twitter is where I more so tweet thoughts on fandom, celebrity, that sort of thing. My Instagram is like used for, just personal things. There's nothing interesting there. But I think that like what I want to take away from the conversation, like we ended on this talk of like art, and art is life. And Britney is an artist, and I will always play her loud. Like, while I might not be able to do anything personally for her, like at this time in her life, I will continue to support her and just play her music loud. I think that's what people do, because she brings so much joy to the world. And like, that's why we love her. So.
And before I forget, one of our authors, delegates, Jessica Bay, she also posted on Twitter. I'm not sure if she was able to come. I can't see all the followers right now, but I do see a lot of hearts going on. And she said, if we're talking about Britney Spears today, it must be a party.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a Britney Spears party, and I hope we have many more parties. Before I end, it's very hard to say goodbye, but I feel like, we have summed up, pretty well. And any final question, thought, idea?
Go ahead, Tamar, because I don't have, like I said, I just want to play Britney. I'm going to be doing that the rest of the day.
First off, I just want to thank both of you and each of you individually for this opportunity to chat. And I'm just really grateful for the connections that we have made throughout the past few months. I think we've touched on so much, and yet we've barely scratched the surface, which is always a beautiful thing. That is that sense of actual hope, like real hope, and not the kind that's sort of packaged and turned into a cliche. Actual engagement, going deep is the way I describe it often. In such a tiny little snippet. I'm just really grateful for that. And I think what to take moving forward, play the music loud, maybe consider playing it on your CD, maybe consider what streaming music is like. And there's no right or wrong. That's the thing that I think maybe doesn't come out in my Twitter rants sometimes, where they're like, oh, she's just going in on such and so. No, each person is each person has their own way forward. It's such a diverse group of fans and activists. It's such a diverse world of artists that I think each of you are also speaking to, and scholars. Like there are these converging, networks and landscapes that are really at the precipice, I think, and already doing great work to move forward with kindness, with empathy, and with awareness, no matter what that looks like. It takes many different shapes and forms. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also nervous. I think many folks following this case are nervous about it, and we do what we can in many different ways. So.
I hope we can connect. I'll message you on, I think it's next Wednesday or whatever the date is, the 29th. Yeah.
Yeah, don't tell anyone at work, but I'm going in teaching one class. I teach high school, and then I am driving down to the courthouse, I think. I haven't decided, but I think so. And just to, again, to bear witness.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for anything else, maybe for something else. Maybe I'll try and get into the courtroom. Who knows if that's even possible? That's a whole other conversation. There are 14 different conversations embedded into this, and maybe we can have more of these in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. I think we should. There needs to be a definite continuation.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the next questions, maybe for next time, Tamar, have you met Britney Spears? How was that? And this is the boiling question right now, but all fans, all followers, all friends, please come back for this next question. Keep connecting with us. Thank you so much for joining. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try to save this conversation, and also I'm going to share my conversation with the journalists on Free Britney Spears. And I have that conversation recorded. It's just, like my personal conversations. And I just realized that, my personal is my professional is my personal.
Yeah.
And I have so many such conversations that just get lost in cyberspace. So I was like, I'm just going to record this, and I was listening to it today, and I'm going to share with you all. So this is not the end. We're not letting you go. And come back for more. And yes, keep posting and tag us as well.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.